Hi, and welcome to this lesson in which we'll be looking at first lesson procedures now, especially with adult classes. So, young learner classes are quite a bit different, but this one will be focused on adult classes. Now, this is my tried and trusted lesson. I use it with every level with minor changes based upon their abilities, which I will explain to you as we go on. So, to begin with, this is what the students see when they first come into the room on their first day of the class. And as they're coming in, I've got the register and I will check their receipts. So they should have their receipts. If not, their name and their student number will be on the register. If it's not, you can either ask them to go to customer service to retrieve a receipt, or just write the name down and you can check on TCMS, which is our registration service at the moment. So you can see on this first page that they will see on the IWB behind me here when they enter is all the information. So for one, I'm checking that they're in the right class. So elementary 2, because due to various scheduling difficulties and timetable changes, it might be the wrong class that they come to. So it's telling them right from the start, this is elementary 2, your teacher is William, me, the timing, the room, and also important information for the course, such as any public holidays where there isn't class, any exams, like especially end of band exams, and when the last lesson will be. Now, the key to a successful first lesson, I would say that there are two things in order that you need to do in the first lesson. One of them is to attempt to build rapport with the class. Now, one of the best ways to build rapport with the class is for them to get to know you a little bit, and for you to show a bit of interest in them. And the best way that you can take interest in them is by one, learning their names, and two, learning just a little bit about their interests and their reasons for being here at the British Council. So I'm going to show you how I do that. Now, this is one of my straightforward getting to know you activities. You'll see many teachers have different variations of this. Other teachers prefer things like snowball fights, where they throw pieces of paper at each other, or find someone where they're all mingling. Okay, but this is how I get them to ask questions about me. This also forms as a diagnostic test of their ability to form questions with the present simple. And like I say, this is for elementary 2. At elementary 1, they have focused on the present simple. In elementary 2, we're going to move on to the past simple. So I'm trying to diagnose if they are perfectly comfortable and if I need to do any more work with, say, auxiliary verbs. So this is what I'm looking at here. So I just point out, okay, William, what do you think William means to me? What's the question? Okay, so they might just say your name. So I'm going, good. But what's the question? So I'm trying to elicit a full, comprehensible sentence out of them and hopefully elicit the question, what's your name? So I do this for all of these. You'll notice that I try to use different question words, different auxiliaries. Again, they might give you a different variation, like do you have any brothers or sisters, etc. And what are your hobbies? What are your interests? What do you do in your free time? Lots of different variations, which is great. Boards them. Fantastic if they can do it. But next, I'm going to do a bit of focus on pronunciation. Now, there's one big reason why I do work on pronunciation so early, and it's because I'm from the north of England, and perhaps they're unfamiliar with my accent. So I'm trying to show them some features of my accent. So, for example, the very first question, what's your name? What's your name? So you see that I almost elide that T. I get rid of that T. I say was. That's a feature of my accent. I'm showing them things like where do you live? So I'm showing them these forms, not necessarily for them to reproduce when they speak, but for their listening. I'm trying to get them as used to as they can to my accent, and you'll be surprised how you need to train them for each individual teacher to be understood. You can grade your language, of course, but there's still differences in pitch or tone or intonation that they will need a bit of training to get up. So again, you're doing a bit of drilling with this, what's your name? What's your name? And you're getting them to train their ears to you. So I'm doing things like that. I'm getting them to repeat. And here I'm looking at sentence stress. Then you move on to them doing something similar. They make something like this for themselves, hopefully using different questions, and then their partner's trying to guess something about them. And then they can put them up around the room, and you do a gallery of sorts where people try to guess which one belongs to who. And then it gets them talking to each other, it visualizes the information, and also it means that they're repeating their names constantly or they're asking questions to each other constantly. And the benefit of this is that you get this reinforced in your mind. I said earlier that one of the first things I do when they come in is I look at their receipts. What I forgot to mention is that as they give me my receipts, I take note of where they're sat in the classroom, and I'm jotting down a seating plan. So you can see in this room, this is like a horseshoe-shaped classroom based here in City Stars. So I will just quickly draw a horseshoe, and I will write their names based on where they're sat. Now, of course, this changes over the lesson based on interaction patterns. So I might also write down some distinguishing features. Maybe just the clothes that they're wearing, blue check shirts, green trousers, something that I can return to later on that helps reinforce their name in my mind, because this is one of the keys to building rapport quite quickly. So then they do something like this for themselves anyway, make it true about themselves, and then you can think of a follow-up activity such as the gallery I've just suggested, which is more like a match the facts to the person sort of thing. And it gets them asking the questions to each other. Where do you live? Heliopolis. How old are you? Oh, 36. It's not you. But they've reproduced those two questions that we focused on here, and you're listening out for the sentence stress, and you're also listening out for their name just to keep associating the name with the face. At other levels, I might ask them a question like, why are you learning English? Certainly at higher levels, like you'll get a lot of people who are there for the IELTS, which is great because then you know what their motivation is. Even at lower levels, some of them will be there to improve. Some of them will be there for a promotion. Some of them might even be thinking about the IELTS even at elementary 2, but they're just at the beginning of the journey. But you might want to get some information out of them, do a task about maybe what they do at home to improve their English, especially, again, at higher levels. This is a question that I asked them. What do you do to practice English at home? Because then you might get responses like they read blogs or they they listen to podcasts and all sorts of interesting things. And they can give each other advice based on this. But like I say, at elementary 2, I tend to keep it to a getting to know you activity like this, because this can go on for some time also. As I provide them with a reading, which is about me. Again, it's kind of just reinforcing the theme of this part of the lesson, which is let's get to know each other. Let's you find out a bit about me, and let's me find out a bit about you. So it is reinforcing the theme of this part of the lesson. Now, what I like to do is to set a task based upon this reading. So it's not comprehension, but it is language based. One of my favorites to do, even at elementary 2, is to ask about parts of speech. So, for example, here, I might ask them to underline any nouns. I might ask them to circle any adjectives or put an asterisk next to any uses of the verb to be. Of course, I'll model this once and then I'll get them to do it together. Now, this is because at elementary 2, they do work on adverbs and adjectives, and there's lots of use of the meta language, really, of English language teaching. So I'm just seeing if they're comfortable enough hearing these or using these yet. Because, again, throughout elementary 2 now, I'm going to be targeting auxiliary verbs. I'm going to be making sure that they're using the verb to be with nouns and adjectives, and that they're using the verb to do with verbs. So I'm just making sure that they are comfortable with this sort of meta language, so that when I'm drawing, say, substitution boards, like they know what I'm talking about and they're not completely lost. So this is a chance for me to diagnose their knowledge of the meta language. So this is something I do with elementary 2. You can see this is my one now for an upper intermediate 3 class. So it's a longer text. There's much more expressive language, but then also some diagnostic grammar. So I'm seeing what they know about these things already. So, for example, with examples of future forms, we might find the present simple for the future, or the present continuous for the future, or going to, or will, and then I'm eliciting from them why they're used in each case. And what this eventually comes down to for both elementary and upper intermediate is for them to then write back to me. This formed a diagnostic writing that I again collate, and I find the errors that are common throughout the class. I can spot from this what we need to work on and when they will work on it. So, for example, at elementary 2, you might find lots and lots of errors with articles. Now, they don't come to articles until elementary 4, but they do some work at elementary 2 on countable and uncountable. So perhaps you could just insert some article work in there. So this is a chance for you to see the mistakes that are quite common. From the time I most recently taught elementary 2, I found the prepositions in, on, at. Next lesson, activity about in, on, at. So it's just spotting what they need very, very early on in the course. I find that writing is quite accurate in doing this because, like I say, you can give them 20 minutes to write as much as they can about themselves, or half an hour or something. Now, all of this usually takes me somewhere in the region of 90 minutes, maybe a little bit more. In the second half of the lesson, we begin with the course book. Now, the reason why I do this is twofold, one of which is to show them the value of the course book, and it's also to get them, again, familiar with the sort of teaching that we'll be doing there. Now, I try to do the communicative language approach, where I choose a lesson for the first lesson that is quite communicative, and it will involve a lot of talking to other people and hopefully finding out some interesting information about other people. So I might skip a grammar lesson for lesson 1. I might change around the sense of progress a little bit to make sure that the lesson that we're doing is going to be useful for my end game of making them comfortable in the classroom. That is what lesson 1 is all about. Anyway, I hope this video has been useful for you. I'll be supplementing it with some activities, such as videos of people actually doing these getting to know you activities, so that you can see them in practice. To see you soon. Thank you very much for joining us.